Hey everyone, this lesson covers parts of section 2.8, market failure, the parts about common access resources, and section 2.9 about public goods. So we're going to start with definition. Common access resources are rivalrous but non-excludable goods or services not owned by a private individual or firm. Now, I'm guessing that does not mean a lot to you, so we're going to have to unpack some of the words in that definition to make it make sense. Here we go. Rivalrous. Rivalrous means that when one person consumes, it affects the ability of others to consume those goods. So I think we'll understand a bit better with some examples. So there's a big fish. If I go fishing in the sea, there's going to be less fish for everybody else if I take some out, right? So fishing is a rivalrous good. However, if I download an app from the App Store, that doesn't stop anyone else from using that app. So an app is what we would call a non-rivalrous good. Non-excludable means that people cannot be easily restricted from using the good. So it might be difficult or expensive to stop people. So think again of a fishing area, the ocean. The ocean is extremely vast, so consider the huge expense that would have to be involved in policing its use. A fishing area, therefore, we would consider non-excludable. Hopefully we now know what a common access resource is, but why does this represent market failure? Let's think back to our underlying assumptions in economics. When we analyze the behavior of people, economic agents, we assume that they will act rationally. But I want you to stop and think about what this means. What does it mean to act rationally? So rational people are acting in their own self-interest. This leads us to the concept of the tragedy of the commons. Common access resources, resources that aren't owned by anyone and not easily restricted, so that is rivalrous and non-excludable, they're prone to be overused. It's in an individual's self-interest to take as many fish as possible from the sea, if you're a fisherman, to sustain themselves, to make money. If they don't do it, someone else will. The tragedy of these common access resources is that they will be depleted. In a free market with no government intervention, the market is going to fail everybody. Now, this Native American proverb, this was on a poster in my high school economics classroom, and I think it applies really well to common access resources. Only when the last tree has died and the last river has been poisoned and the last fish been caught will we realize we cannot eat money. It takes in the idea of the overproduction in the fishing industry, but also industrial pollution, which can cause the rivers to be poisoned, as well as climate change and deforestation. Clean air, forests, and waterways, these are all common access resources as well. So think back to our definitions. They're quite hard to exclude people from, and the use of them by one person does affect how others can consume it. So they are rivalrous as well. Now, using what we've previously learned in market failure, I want you to try to draw a diagram. I want you to try to draw a diagram showing the failure of the overproduction of fishing. The best thing for your learning would be to try first without referring to your old notes. And then once you've made that proper attempt, then you can refer to your notes. So pause now and have a go. It's the diagram showing the failure of the overproduction of fishing. Okay, this is what you should have come up with. It's an overproduction. So we should be thinking two supply curves because of that word production, supply. So we've got the two supply curves are the marginal private costs. Sorry, where's my cursor? There it is. Marginal private costs and the marginal social costs. Private costs to the fishing are, of course, the boat, the nets, the labor, and the time, among other things. The social costs are higher because in addition to those private costs, we've also got the depletion of the fish resource. There will be less for the rest of society to enjoy. For this reason, the social costs, MSC, are above the private costs, MPC. So here it's higher because we've got cost on this y-axis. So we can show that MSC is above MPC, costs are higher. If we look carefully at the diagram here, anytime production goes beyond Q opt, the marginal social costs, this curve here, are greater than the marginal social benefit, this curve here. So that means that each additional fish taken out of the water beyond Q opt does more harm to society than it benefits society. However, private fishermen, in their self-interest, they only really care about their own private costs and benefits. And maximizing these, they will fish at quantity Q3. So their costs and their benefits, they want to maximize their own benefits or their own utility. Therefore, they'll be fishing at this quantity. Thus, we've got that over-allocation of resources and therefore a market failure. Now, you may be thinking, but aren't fishermen also affected by the overfishing? And yeah, they are. And this could be included in their private costs. But as one of many fishing fleets in the ocean, they're really only affected just that little bit. So the costs to society are much higher, definitely. One way to maintain the biodiversity of the oceans is to implement limits on the bycatch. So bycatch is the incidental capture of non-target species such as dolphins, marine, turtles and seabirds when you're trying to catch the fish that you want. So a possible government response may be to implement bycatch limits. Fishing vessels could only remove so much extra marine life from the ocean in addition to their target fish. I want you to think and draw how you think this policy could be shown on this diagram. So pause now and have a go. Okay, now some of you might have seen that I accidentally left this here, so that would have given you a fair hint as to what's happening. What should happen is that this should increase the costs for fishermen. They now have to be more clever and targeted when catching their fish. This might mean extra technology or more time spent removing bycatch from their nets. Either way, this is going to increase their costs. So if we increase their private costs, this is what happens. We shift that MPC to the left and we see the quantity reduced from the free market quantity to Q1. So it reduces the overproduction and it diminishes this deadweight loss to society. So now we're only overproducing by this much. So that difference between the social costs and social benefits, it's not as much of a failure anymore. We're going to look at other methods to combat the overexploitation of common access resources in our class activities. Now, we're going to move to the market failure of the under-provision of public goods. What is a public good? Here's our definition. They are non-rivalrous and non-excludable goods that are available for all to consume, regardless of who pays and who does not. These terms should look somewhat familiar to you. Let's see. Okay, now there aren't a lot of examples of public goods. Here are a couple. So the Defence Force, whether or not you agree with the military, you are using it. That is, you receive the benefits of your country having a strong military due to the extra degree of safety that you're going to receive. It's non-rivalrous because your neighbour receiving the benefits of the military does in no way diminish the benefits that you receive from having a military. We also can't exclude certain people from receiving those benefits. I mean, have a think about how you could. We can't exclude them. Streetlights are another example. You can't be excluded from using them because they're on. They're going to turn off when you come down the street. And you consuming them has no effect on other street users. It doesn't diminish the benefits that they receive from them. Now, what's important here is that we don't fall into the common trap of thinking that public goods are any goods provided by public money, that is, the government. It's a much narrower set of goods than that. So a public school, definitely not what we would call a public good. So I can see how the terminology is quite tricky there, but we need to know that public goods are a different thing. So at this point, public goods are probably still a bit tricky to understand. Why would they be underprovided? So the failure comes in a free market, which we don't live in. The examples that I gave you, the military and the streetlights, they're commonly provided by the government as a response to the failure. So we all see them always there, but in a truly free market, they wouldn't be. So without the government, many of these goods wouldn't be provided. And this is due to what we call the free rider problem. So private firms seeking profit, they won't provide streetlights because they can't exclude what we call free riders, people who enjoy it without paying. They can't exclude free riders from using the streetlights. And if you think about it, if you can't exclude someone from using a good, then it's really hard to charge them a price for it. You'll never see this picture charging people to see the sunset because you can't exclude them from it. They can see the sunset without paying the $10. So if you can't exclude someone, then you can't charge them. Lights just went out. So clearly, the best option is for governments to provide these goods. What they do is they essentially pool society's money in the form of taxes to provide these goods that everyone benefits from. At times, we can get confused when we see private companies erecting, say, road signs or doing maintenance on streetlights. This doesn't mean they're not public goods. This is just another way that governments provide public goods. They contract out the provision to private businesses. If it wasn't for the government providing the money, the private businesses would not put up street lights or put up street signs. They wouldn't have the profit incentive to do so. Okay, we're going to go over these in class a fair bit because I think both of these, the problem really lies in understanding what a common access resource is and what a public good is. So we will make sure that we fully understand that. Okay, thank you.